Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/entitled people, where people seem to think that the world revolves around them and that nobody else matters. And in today's episode, guys, we've got psycho Karen bosses, people stealing mobility scooters, insane Karen stealing cars. Guys, get ready to shake your heads because the stories are absolutely ridiculous. I hope you enjoy them. Hit subscribe if you haven't, and as always, your crazy Karen stories can be sent right here. So this happened a few weeks ago. I'm a 23-year-old female and I work at a nice daycare. We're still doing some COVID screenings, mainly temperature checks and masking. So I go into work that morning and I feel fine and great, but as I went on, I start feeling really tired and sick. My assistant general manager, kind of like the vice principal, saw me resting during nap time and asked if she could check my temperature. I had planned on coming to her anyway when I got a break for lunch, but I'm lucky she found me because my fever was 102 degrees. She's an amazing woman, and she immediately sends me home with instructions not to return until I felt 100% better. So I go home, pop some pills, and fall asleep on the couch. My husband was still at work, so I was home all by myself. I get woken up probably an hour later by a loud, and I mean fist-pounding loud banging on my front door. My dog's going nuts, so I grab our gun because I'm thinking it's someone trying to break in. I then peek out the peephole and it's my general manager, and she's beating on the front door screaming my name. Now I'm not answering the door, I'm honestly scared. She's screaming that I need to come back to work and I didn't tell her I left, so without a positive COVID test, I had to come back. Now I'm thinking, F that, so I go back to my room hoping she just goes away. I do want to note that my car is parked in the garage, so there isn't really any way she can see if I'm actually home or not. So a couple of minutes later, I get a phone call from my mom, who lives 4 hours away, sobbing that my general manager called her saying that I was missing. Missing! Now my boss knew I was home, and if honest to God was worried I was missing, she would have called my husband, who's my first contact that actually lives in the same state. At this point, I'm livid because I tried to explain to my mom what happened as my boss starts banging on my door again. So I walk to the door and yank it open with my mom still on the phone when I see police officers outside. The woman had called the police for a welfare check on me. And for those of you wondering, well, if she went as far as to call the cops saying you were missing, maybe she thought you were missing. And to that I say no, and I know this because after explaining to the officers I was fine and just sick, she smugly walks up to me and says, and I frickin' quote, "I knew you were there. You need to come back to work immediately because we have no one to cover you. I will wait out here to follow you." At this point, I just told her to F right off, and if she ever came back to my house, I'd call the police for a restraining order. I never went back, and I put in a report to corporate branch, and from what my friends told me, she lost her job after an investigation. I'm still in shock of it all. Apparently she harassed other teachers as well. All this mess was because I went home sick to protect my students. Guys, I'm glad she got canned for doing that to OP. I don't think it's ever okay to go to an employee's home to harass them about coming back to work. And I'm absolutely shocked that she actually called OP's mom to tell her that her daughter went missing, and then called the police for a welfare check. Has that manager lost her friggin' marbles? And guys, she could have easily covered OP's shift. Clearly she had nothing better to do than to stalk and harass her employees. So I'm an EMT in a somewhat busy area. In the not too distant past, my ambulance was dispatched to a vehicle accident in the middle of the night. We roll up and yup, it's a pretty bad one. It's a car versus deer. The car ended up off the road, through a ditch, wrapped around a tree. The patient was still trapped inside the car and the fire department is working to extricate. Now due to the layout, the ambulance is pulling blocking duty on the road. My partner heads up to the accident to start rendering some on-scene care, and I hop into the back of the ambulance to start prepping for the inevitable crap show that this patient's gonna be. As I'm getting gear laid out, I hear a horn start blaring right behind my truck. Enter Karen. Now, it's not uncommon to be on one scene and have someone roll up with a totally different emergency. So I hop out the side door of my truck, walk around, and I've got a car literally bumper to bumper with the back of my rig. As I walk up to her car, she screams out the window, "Hey, move! I need to get through." I very politely inform that person that we're not gonna move, as this is a dangerous accident scene with injured people. I offered to get her turned around, and that was a big mistake. The Karen goes into a literal screaming fit about how we have to move because we're blocking the road, which is exactly the point, and how her tax dollars pay my salary. At this point, I'm a little less polite and inform her that she needs to back her vehicle up because she's blocking my ability to work. It's at this point things get stupid, so rather than be an adult and find a different route, this oxygen thief pulls forward even more. She's not only bumper to bumper, she's hit my ambulance and has the most smug grin ever. Enter my friend the state trooper. He's been watching this cavalcade of idiocy from the sidelines, and as soon as Karen hits the ambulance, he springs into action. Karen basically gets snatched out of her car, put in handcuffs, and she's screaming all the while. The Karen problem solved, but I still have the Karen chariot blocking the rear doors to my rig. Her car was then relocated by 6 firefighters. Thus ends my story. So the good news is the accident victim survived. Granted, with more than a few broken bones, and Karen discovered that interfering with emergency services is a felony. Guys, I can't believe how inconsiderate that ambulance was, right? Like, how dare they block the road at the scene of a horrific accident? Like, don't they know important people have places to be? Okay, jokes aside, honking at an ambulance to move out of the way at a scene of an accident is just disgusting behavior, guys. And speaking of disgusting behavior, this person shares their experience and they say, "Once we had a dude that had a stroke or a heart attack at my spot. We obviously called 911 and my bartender was doing chest compressions until EMTs got there. They came pretty quickly, whisked him off, and it was terrifying. It was at this point a Karen literally screamed in my bartender's face for not bringing her appetizers quickly enough. He cursed her out in Polish and she got confused and told him to learn English and bring me my food. Like, the guy saved that dude's life, and she was bent about not getting chicken strips or whatever in a timely manner. Some frickin' people, man. It makes me fear for the world." Okay, so today I went to the grocery store with my grandma. It's a short distance away from her house, so I walked and she went on her mobility scooter because she can't walk very far. When we got to the store, my grandma used a shopping cart to lean on so she can walk around the shop to keep strength in her legs. And I rode the mobility scooter behind her. Now, I've never really had any problem with anyone while riding the scooter because no one really cares as long as I'm careful. Although I do sometimes get the odd side glance or huff from people who see someone getting on and off a mobility scooter. But today was something else. As I was riding around, some woman comes up to me and asked if I really needed that mobility scooter. I politely told her that I didn't, but it's not one that the store provides. It's actually one that's owned by my grandma. They look very similar. At that, she huffed and walked off, and I carried on following my grandma. We talked about how weird that interaction was, and we laughed it off. So a few aisles down, I stepped out of the mobility scooter to grab a drink. As I sat back down, the same woman was pretty much stalking me. She walks up to me and said, "Hey, you don't even need that. You're walking. Give it to me." I told her again that it was my grandma's scooter that she had brought with her, not the store's. I told her I was following her on it and then pointed to my grandma. The woman then gave us both a dirty look, smirked, and then walked off. Then about 5 minutes later, she comes storming towards me with one of the employees. She was shouting about how I stole the mobility scooter that she was using. The glorified bag boy asked me if I stole the scooter from the woman. I told him if he looked properly, he would notice it wasn't a store scooter. The bag boy then took another look at the scooter and told the woman that it wasn't one of theirs. Again, she stormed off, and I thought it was over with. It was at this point I told my grandma to get on her scooter, just in case the woman does come back and tries to give me more crap for it. She did, and we continued shopping and finished without any trouble. But at the checkout, my grandma was sitting on the scooter. The same entitled woman walks up to my grandma and starts shouting at her. I didn't quite catch everything she said, and before you know it, I suddenly heard my grandma scream. It wasn't an angry scream, but it was a more scared, horrified scream. The crazy woman had pulled my grandma off the scooter and she threw her to the floor. My grandma happens to have really frail bones and I saw red. At this point, people were freaking out that something like this happened, and I left everything where it was, ran over to my grandma and helped her up. The woman was trying to drive off with the scooter, and as soon as I caught her, I kid you not, I pushed that woman so hard that she flew off the other side of the scooter. She then just laid there on the floor screaming that she had just been attacked. At this point, the manager stopped us and accused me of attacking another customer. But I told her that the customer attacked my grandma first and stole her mobility scooter. I told the manager my name, address, and phone number. I told her to check the CCTV, and if they wanted me, they had my details. The police ended up contacting me a few days later, and I had to go to the station to give a statement. I'm currently waiting to find out if I have to go to court or not. Guys, stories like this make me so angry. Like, what part of that scooter belongs to my grandma did that woman not understand? And then she had the audacity to throw OP's poor grandma off the scooter. But guys, some people be too darn crazy. So this incident was so stupid that I can't really help but to share the story since my friends keep telling me to. What I find most weird about this is that my car isn't anything super special. My car is just a yellow 2010 V6 Chevy Camaro with black stripes. When I bought it, it was super cheap because the passenger side door had been smashed in somehow, and there was already 130,000 miles on the odometer, but the title was still good. All I know is the car looked like a good deal, so I bought it. A friend of mine who works in auto body fixed it for me. Together, we managed to find a door at a salvage yard that was the same color. A little work and the car looked almost new. It became my fun ride to commute to work or drive around when I didn't feel like using my other car. I didn't do any modifications to it. I'm not one of those guys that's into speed or crazy mods. I liked the car because it looked cool and the gas mileage wasn't so bad with the V6. I drove that Camaro for a year before running into a random Karen at a supermarket last year in September. Now, I've seen many Karens, but I was lucky to hardly ever be noticed by them. On this day, I was shopping for some stuff to make dinner, and I was about to head home when I found the Karen with her young son all over my car after exiting the store. I'm guessing the boy was around 4 years old, and his mom was taking pictures of the kid sitting on my hood while the kid kept smiling and gleefully screaming, "Bumblebee." And yes, I understand the reference, and we've all heard it before. I don't like people messing with my property, let alone being on the hood of my car, so I tell the kid to get off. The Karen then takes one look at me and told me to mind my own business. Now, I'm a 29-year-old male, but I have a bit of a baby face, and with my casual clothing, it made me look like a teenager. So I guess to her, I couldn't be someone who'd have anything to do with such a nice car. I told the Karen to get off my Camaro, and she bluntly told me that there was no way that it was my car because I'm too young. I then pulled out my keys and hit the alarm button on the remote. That made the alarm start blaring for a second, and her kid jumped off while screaming and crying because I'd frightened him. But rather than pay attention to her crying child, the Karen comes running at me full speed and managed to shove me hard and cause me to trip and fall over. The next part's a bit hazy. I got a bump in the head, and that crazy woman slurred every word she was screaming at me. She then pulled the keys from my hand before I actually had a chance to react. When I got to my feet, she was comforting her crying kid and telling him that I was a mean person. I told her to return my keys, but she got hissy and said that there was no way the Camaro was mine. I again stated it was, and I would only give her one more chance to return my keys. She didn't. Instead, she handed them to her kid, who proceeded to start playing with the buttons on the remote and unlock the doors. At this point, I had enough, so I got my phone out to call the police. When the Karen saw that I was on the phone, she starts screaming and charging at me again. Though this time I easily dodged her, and she nearly fell in the asphalt and screamed that I'd assaulted her. The 911 operator was on the phone with me and was listening to everything that was going on, and I quickly told her where we were while this insane woman was still screaming at me. 2 police cars had shown up before long. At this point, the Karen had locked herself in the car with her son, and she started the engine to run the AC. I then explained everything to the police. They knocked on the window of the Camaro to get the Karen to open it and to give her side of the story. She claimed this car to be hers and that I was just some stupid broke-ass teenager that tried to carjack her. She then bragged that she'd taken me down. The officer asked if that meant she shoved me over, to which she bluntly said yes. I then told the police to look in my glove compartment. In there was my insurance card and a copy of my registration, and they could compare that to the name on my license. When the Karen heard that, she gets out of the car and finally admits that it wasn't hers, but then she said there was no way it could be mine and that I stole it. She told the officers that she took the keys from me to find the real owner, and that quickly earned her some shiny new bracelets, and she was put screaming into the back of the police car. The parking lot had cameras, so it was easy to prove the assault. I of course pressed charges, though my testimony wasn't really needed since the police had both the CCTV from the parking lot and the audio from my phone call. It turned out to be the Karen's third offense, and she got 2 years in prison and lost her son. Guys, all I can think of is that poor child, 4 years old guys, being dragged into a stupid mess like this. I'm assuming the mom was either drunk or drugged up because OP did mention that she was slurring everything she said. And if not, that's some scary ass entitlement, guys. Like, she literally believed OP couldn't have owned a car like that and then stole it from him and told police that it was hers. Like, absolutely crazy. I'm an oncologist, meaning I specialize in cancer and cancer treatments. About 12 years ago, I ran into a Karen. So I diagnosed a patient with a fairly aggressive but treatable form of leukemia. I had taken said patient into my office, and as a minor, he had his mom accompanying him. I went over the treatment details and such, and generally had a good talk to them about what was going on. Now, I was born in Norway, raised by a Nordic pagan dad and mom. Because of this, I have artwork of Mjolnir hanging in my office. She eventually asked what it was, most likely to make some light in the day, and I explained it, its meaning, and why I keep it in my office. Karen did not take very well to this. The next remark I got was, "Oh, so you're a god hater. How do you suppose my son is gonna get through this with an atheist satanic crapbag as a doctor?" That was her actual words. I remember it like it was yesterday. I made absolutely no mention of God or anything, for the record. I calmly explained to her that I had absolutely no hate towards anyone's religion at all. To which she replied, "Yeah, so I think we're just gonna go see another doctor. We'd rather have a better opinion than from someone who doesn't give an F about if someone lives." Now, hearing that, I was absolutely thrown off. I said it was probably good to get some second opinions on treatments anyway. Her and her son then stormed out. She ended up going to a hospital across town to a doctor I've known for years at this point. So the doctor tells me this side of the story. So Karen goes in and says her son's diagnosis and wants to discuss treatment options. She said she didn't like the feel of the first doctor, and that's why she went to him. So after discussing her treatment options, she said, "Yeah, that's what the other moron said too. Is there a place to get another opinion?" On top of some other very aggressive speaking. So the doctor recommended her to me. For the record, I've never seen another situation like this since. Her son told her apparently that he liked me and to give me a shot, and she caved. So through multiple sessions, she would tell me how she didn't believe her son was gonna make it from a god hater, and that her son was going to die because of me. This went on for months. Agony for professionalism. After a bit under a year, her son was cancer-free. At a 5-year checkup, now over 18, he thanked me for everything I've done, and asked if he could have the artwork his mom freaked out about. He had apologized many times over for her behavior in the past, and he was a very fun kid to be around in dark times. He's one of my favorite patients of all time. I said no, but I knew a blacksmith in Norway. I had him hand forge a Mjolnir necklace and gave it to the patient, to which he wears every day as far as I know. He's training to be an oncologist one day, and saw his university on social media post a picture of him with a necklace I gave him hanging off his neck. Just because someone's a Karen doesn't mean they raised one. All I'm gonna say is I'm glad the boy is cancer-free, regardless of his mom's negative attitude towards OP. Like, I'm sure doctors get stuff like this happen to them all the time. You just have to push past the comments and do your job. What a wholesome story, right? And I hope you guys thoroughly enjoyed that. And my friends, that brings us to another end of our /entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's super crazy entitled stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's in our /pro revenge, where OP's boss blackmails him because he refuses to obey him, and OP comes back and gets everybody arrested. It's such a crazy story, so go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.